Hi folks, been a while since I got some new books for the collection, but today I have two new arrivals, one from Lost in Cult and one from Bitmap Books. I have quite a few books from Bitmap Books already, but this is the first Lost in Cult one I have, although I do have a copy of an issue of their Lock On Bookazine issue 003. They're currently taking pre-orders for the new issue 006, and there's a link below as well as a link to order a copy of this, a Handheld history. There's also a sister book covering consoles called The Console Chronicles. Unsurprisingly, this chronicles the history of handheld consoles. Love the look of the cover with this hand-drawn art. It depicts various handheld consoles along with boxed and loose games, but all the games are fictional, obviously for copyright reasons. It's very heavy and has a pink spine. I really like the colours. I'll just remove this obi strip or whatever you call it. It's 252 pages, so this covers the entire gamut of handhelds from the early single game devices right up to modern stuff like the Switch and everything in between. Okay, so we're starting off with Game & Watch, which is where I started with games myself in the early 80s. Each section has a lot of great information. For example, the Game & Watch and Game Boy sections have some history on Gunpei Yokoi, who created them. Original DMG Game Boy and Game Boy Color. That's one thing I really like in this book, the shots of all the different consoles, so you've got the various colours as well as the limited editions, and it lists the release year of each. There are a few box shots as well throughout the book, like these Japanese Game Boy ones, not many, just a few per system. Advance Wars there, one of my favourites. We've got more modern stuff here like 3DS and 2DS, and Switch. Love the display of Joy-Cons here. PSP, PS Vita and the good old Sega Game Gear. Lots of great memories here. Love the Japanese Game Gear boxes. There are obscura handhelds in here too, and everything else like Gizmondo, Atari Lynx, Neo Geo Pocket and so on. The Tiger handhelds, loved these as a kid. One thing I really like is that each section of the book is written by someone different, so it doesn't get boring. Obviously that means a lot of it is subjective, but I like that personal touch. And I was surprised to see some of my friends have written sections. Larry Bundy wrote the Game Gear piece, and Chris Hill covered the Tiger handhelds. I know he's a big collector of these things. It's a fun and interesting read. So that's the first book, a handheld history from Lost in Cult, really well made. Next up is the one from Bitmap Books. Let's open this up. This is I'm Too Young to Die, a history of first-person shooters, a genre that I absolutely loved back in the 90s. This has a sleeve, but the book underneath is printed with the same artwork. I find it's hard to keep these sleeves in good condition, to be honest. Really cool artwork, simple but impactful. This is 424 pages and it weighs a ton. Now this chronicles the genre from 1992 to 2002, so as I said, really the era during which I was playing a lot of first person shooters. Over 180 games are covered, and there's a foreword, or forward if you're in North America, by John Romero. The book's name itself is of course a reference to Doom. The big draw of this book is the developer interviews. You can see here there are 13 developer interviews. Each developer has a Doom style pixel art icon. You've got some great names in here, John Romero of course, Ken Levine, Ken Silverman, David Doak. Although the book is described as covering 1992 to 2002, they do acknowledge that the genre didn't start with Wolfenstein 3D, so there's a section on the precursors before we get to 92. There are also sections on the genre itself looking at its defining characteristics. Then we get to the games looking at each year in order. So many of my favourites here, Doom, Heretic and Hexen, Dark Forces and of course GoldenEye. Here we have the interview with Rare's David Doak, someone I've had the pleasure of interviewing myself. And then we end up at 2002, and similar to the precursor section at the front, we get a 2003 and beyond section at the end. Really interesting book this one, the developer interviews really make this a fascinating read. Anyway, links to both in the description if you want to grab either of these. Thanks for watching.